Welcome back, fellow commoners. It's once again Adam speaking here. I'm not actually sure I've actually told you told you guys my name, but it's Adam, and it's a pleasure to having you all back here in the on the Commoners channel. And today we're going to be discussing a subject which I've not really touched at all in my past past previous vi- past p- previous videos, and I'd really love if you check those out. They'll be on the channel, so one click link in the description below. But anyway, the topic which I'd love to discuss today is social anxiety, or anxiety in general. It's um, it's a personal issue of mine, something which I'm struggling with on a daily basis, and it's also something which I'm well aware that people of different backgrounds, no matter if you're rich or poor, fat or thin, that it's something which everyone once or even more in their life has to deal with in general, really. And I think it's very important to really just lift this subject up at all and discuss it, seeing as it's something that's very common and it's something which everyone really has to deal with. And I really just wanted to take this particular video in the direction that I'm going to be discussing my personal my personal struggle with a social anxiety, and really see if perhaps my story could help anyone out there to like figure out how they can deal with their own problems and so forth. Like, I can never put myself in the position that I know 100% how to solve this issue, and I can never actually claim that I know how to get myself in any one of your guys' situations and know precisely how to deal with them. But I can tell how I've dealt with social anxiety in the past and how I've gone from a person that was very insecure, quite depressed actually, and going to a position in my life where I feel I can take different challenges on, and how I can deal with social situations and actually feel like I'm not, I don't have to fear putting myself out there at all. And my tale in short is really the fact that I grew up being fairly bullied by the community where I grew up. I was severely overweight during my childhoods, from roughly being 10 until 17, 18 actually, and for for the major part of my teenage years, I had to endure different kind of bullying, even if it was just snide comments on my appearance, or the fact that rather than being out running around uh, drinking in my youthful years, I actually spent a lot of time indoors at my computer and so forth. And I was severely bullied by the community where I grew up in, and I always felt like an outsider. And this put me in a situation where, up until just about two years ago, I was very insecure in social situations where I had to grab attention from other people. And like towards the end of my teenage years, I lost a lot of weight and I started going to the gym and so forth. But even if I lost all this weight, and even if I did manage to buff myself somewhat up, it didn't change the fact that I still felt immensely insecure. Like talking to women or like being around other people in general, I always felt like I was that fat teenage kid. And this is not something that just simply goes away. It's some it's something you have to work on a daily basis, and you have to really change the mindset from being overweight and overlooked. You have to change it to a position where you yourself have accepted yourself, that you are worth something, that you're worth the attention of others, and that of you're worth of something. Because I personally felt like my social anxiety came from a sort of root where I managed to convince myself that I'm not worth of anything. Like I'm not worthy of a pretty girl talking to. I'm not worthy of having friends. Like it was a psychology thing where I somehow managed to corner myself. I turn into my worst enemy. And this is something I, even if I've gone come a long way from when I was a teenager and where I didn't feel like I had any sort of value, it's still sometimes a struggle for me going out being social, and I can still be quite awkward in certain moments where, for example, me and my friends are out in a bar and we're talking to random strangers, and there are some quite attractive women, and I can still feel like, holy shit, why are these why are these women talking to me? Why would any one of these ever go home with me? Why should I'm not I don't deserve to talk with them because I'm not beautiful. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not good looking enough. And I think that what really managed to change my perspective to the point where I can put myself out in this position was manage to convince myself. And how did I do this? Like I think I personally managed to overcome most of my social anxiety through simply really praising myself for what I consider myself good at. And what is this, you might think? Like it could be anything from university studies to the fact that I have managed to lose some weight, but it can also be something as simple as I know I'm a good person. I know I don't treat my friends unfairly, and just through focusing on these positive things about yourself and actually putting them above um, what what perhaps is normed by society. I think you can really manage to rebuild your self-worth in a sense, like, because one of the major things I feel about social anxiety that's really like crushing most people is the fact that you're crushing your own self-esteem and you're really putting yourself in a position where you don't think you're worth anything. But I think through taking minor things which are really good about your personality and something you consider yourself good at, you can really rebuild your own psychology, your own like excuse my language, the psychological view of yourself to the point where you once again rebuild your self-esteem and your self-worth. Because I think that self-esteem and self-worth are like two things that are quite like they're entwined in a way where if you don't have one thing, you don't have the other. Because self-esteem is where you're brave and courageous enough to put yourself in certain situations, but self-worth is where you value your own personal traits and your own personality and like yourself. And I think if you don't have the others, you can't have. It has to be a particular balance between those two. And I think if you rebuild self-worth, and like you manage to convince yourself that you're worth something, your self-esteem will rise at the same time. At least that's how it was for me. I didn't think that I was worth anything at all during the major part of my teenage years. I always felt less to my fellow commoners, and I always felt like I wasn't as good to others, even if I was still just a kid. I hadn't done anything wrong. It was just them that had managed to convince myself that, holy shit, that fat kid is worth jack shit to anyone here. But over the years, as I got older, I managed to rebuild my own personal self-worth. And as that rose higher, I could kind of rebuild my self-esteem and like the confidence in myself, really. And I think that's one good way to beat social anxiety is by managing to convince your own brain and yourself that you're worth something. You can really manage to overcome a lot of the fear of putting yourself out there, because it's no longer about like convincing others that you're worth something, because you already know you're worth something. And at least that's how I managed to defeat most of my social anxiety. And like I would never have like been able to talk about these things if it hadn't been for uh, my own personal victory over that. But yeah, this was really just a short video, and I really want to thank anyone for listening, and I really hope that you're enjoying this content. And if you actually do, I would love if you actually could subscribe to the channel and perhaps leave a comment on your own personal experience with social anxiety if you've had any or anything of the sort. But yeah, otherwise I will see you guys in the next video, and I really wish all of you, my fellow commoners, the greatest of time, and I really hope that whatever you're currently dealing with, that you manage to overcome that. And yeah, I will talk to you soon.